and welcome to the Seventh Planet Broadcasting. Today is September 27th, 2016, and we have a very special show where we're going to dive deep into the master creator of all's plan. And I'm joined today with Gerald Clark, the famous author of The Anunnaki of Nibiru and Seventh Planet Mercury Rising.
Oh, you're too kind. I appreciate it. And this is really going to be a lot of fun today. Matt and I have been planning this deep dive for quite some time. So he finally pinned me down today. We've gone through the script and he's going to produce a bang up show today. So here we go.
Well, thank you so much for being on the show today. I brought together some questions with Gerald. So we wanted to really look into, is there a master plan for our reality in the universe? And are we missing it in most cases? And has it been kind of hidden from us? And so I want to start by diving into what is the foundations of this holographic universe that we're part of. And is it something that is maybe kind of an illusion of matter? And Gerald is an expert on this area. He's an engineer mind who came at this from looking at everything from AI to every kind of construct that would lead into an artificial intelligence, and understanding what the engineering mastermind could be behind. If you were creating a new being out of technology, what would be the constructs that would be needed for that? And so when Gerald was kind of researching all of this, and as all of these things came along in his path, it immediately resonated with him because of his background. And so Gerald has the holographic universe on here today from Michael Talbot. He's going to talk about how there is a great connection to that the Mayans have talked about for thousands of years. So Gerald, what do you have here?
Okay, well, let me kind of give you the pathway when I started waking up to the idea that there was a holographic universe. And as an engineer, I'd been exposed to some really deep researchers who were looking at how to do optical computing and what the constrictions were in that process. And it turned out that the access to a different form of memory was the key to operating at light speed. They could do light switching in a computer, but they didn't know how to store stuff in a construct such that it could be accessed, never going electrical, but only using laser, okay? And I was exposed to a researcher at UCSD that was involved in that project. I got funded. And they essentially ended up with this crystal material that was 3D addressable with two different lasers, such that you could find data that's stored in a cube structure, if you will, instead of on a flat surface that's, doing random access memory searches through flash memory or something like that. So I had this idea of how a hologram worked, and had been exposed to it through engineering. But I never really thought about anything other than it being a video trick relative to bringing a 3D object to life for entertainment purposes, okay?
That's right.
And so I read, somehow I stumbled on Michael Talbot's book here that's shown in the picture. And it's a wonderful book for anybody that wants to read it. And it turns out that Michael had exposed me to the idea that perhaps our memory constructs were not working the way that we thought they did. And that, certain functions were being mapped in the brain with horseradish peroxidase to stain this area, see what lights up when you do this and that, in various psychological realms. And also it ended up in Western medicine as well, looking for how to map the brain and how it works. Well, in this process of looking into that, his book, he was talking about a patient who was injured and was having brain surgery. And that because of the area of the brain that was removed, they figured that memory that was associated with that would be removed as well. And this is where Michael started pointing out that the brain had the ability to take the entire whole and can contain it in any part of the brain like a hologram does. So I was like, wow, is that really possible? So he started waking me up to the idea that this bidirectional associative memory model that I'd studied in AI could possibly be true because of the physical evidence they had with surgery patients. So I'm like,
that is absolutely fascinating. And it makes you start to wonder what is actually real and what is simply an illusion of matter, right?
Exactly. So then I had been involved in an artificial intelligence company where we had been modeling sensor fusion for a machine, like machine intelligence, but it also started with a human going, well, how do humans do it? And then can we get the machine to do that? So in that process, I want to show you also, it's an area called sensor fusion. I'm going to bring that picture up for you in a second. But I also wanted you to see that in mainstream publications out in the populace, you can see like Scientific American is asking these questions. And this has been going on for a while since Michael Talbot brought this up. This is in 2003, August, by the way. So the idea that scientists have been thinking about the electromagnetic spectrum, our perception, and what we're actually seeing, what's out there versus what's in here, they may not be exactly the way they've been perceived to be, right? So I started thinking about what we were doing in the artificial intelligence community by taking our 5 senses, synthesizing those into sensors. Now, we were using charge coupled device CCD cameras for the imaging part. We had acoustic sensors that would model the ears, and radar that would go out over different spectra to see objects, doing pattern recognition, all these kind of things, okay, that models what humans do. And even some of the technology now can do it better than a human can, right? Certain technology can see forward-looking infrared radar, right? So you can fly around at night in the trees with a TV camera. Okay?
And the more we're learning about this, the more we're realizing that a lot of our sensors are pretty limited compared to a lot of the other animals that are on this planet.
Exactly. So what I want to bring out of this diagram is this fusion of what's out there and how we build an image of it. So we know in a human, what's out in the world goes through a process of training our neural network in our cortronic region of our brain, affiliates those objects with bidirectional associative memory tokens that represent them so that you can bring them up in context, you see it, brings up that token, all the emotions and everything goes with it. Okay, so we learned how to model a human from a sensor fusion standpoint based on Robert Heck Nielsen's work in cortronic networks. This was
basically recreating a human experience.
Exactly. So all of a sudden, the idea of this holographic reality becomes even more real to you when you really dig into how our senses get turned into a perception in the brain and then maps to tokens that builds this picture for us, all right? So in other words, there's no screen inside your head, so when your eyes see something, it gives you exactly what's out there, okay? This is the disconnect. As a matter of fact, in studying the optical system, which I was kind of an expert on already through flight school and all the things they put you through and expose you to, how the eye can be tricked by light.
How important that is.
Gets you into all kinds of trouble, okay? Between the rods, the cones, the fovea centralis, and mesopic versus scotopic light conditions that can really mess you up, when the rods and cones don't know which one's in charge, okay? So dusk is a very dangerous time for your visual system from that standpoint. Well, so in that process, I started thinking about what Michael Talbot had said about this nature of the hologram. And I was a computer engineer, so I've been writing lots of programs. We had written a 6 Degree of Freedom program that had a terrain model in it so that we could fly our aircraft through this simulator, okay? A simulator in 6 degrees, okay? Pitch, roll, yaw, and then both the longitudinal and the horizontal axis, okay? So we had something that could model an airplane like this through 3D space, running through here, being exposed to the things that would trigger the sensors to create an image in your head of what is interesting, okay? And that in and of itself turned out to be a very key part of this illusion of matter and what it is that we're focused on out in that space of what's interesting, okay? So I won't go too deeply into that, but this brought up a model of the hologram that I discovered when I wrote the book, The Seventh Planet Mercury Rising. I read these emerald tablets from Paul, and I started making some sketches because I realized if I had done this and then put it in the book, it would have been even more powerful. So I put it on my blog and turned them into digital art and tried to share it. But I'll show you, this is how the sketch started out, okay? And I like the sketch even better than the digital sometimes. But
I actually haven't even seen this sketch. It's really neat to see where it first began on the engineering side.
Yeah, well, we can start from the Earth standpoint, or we can start from the creator of all standpoint. And actually, I'll bring up the digital version so you can see how this got turned into a piece.
I think what people need to understand is what Gerald has done here is not simply draw a little pretty picture, but this is literally the framework for the construct of what this universe is.
Exactly.
And what we're going to perceive it in our reality.
Right.
So this is like, he's already mapped out the entire thing right before your eyes. So I would really encourage everyone to look very closely at this, because the answers to so many questions can be found right in this work right here.
Yeah, this is a very, very deep chart, and we're only on question number 1, but it brings up this model that I derived from reading the Emerald Tablets and studying Thoth's works very closely. So I put this together based on what he said, and everything out of here is from his model except for what's shown here around the Earth. You see there's an L1, an L2, and L3. Okay, those correspond to the Van Allen belts, but the locale 1, 2, and 3 were the exact same descriptions that came from Robert Monroe's book, Journeys Out of the Body, okay, where he describes these barriers to the out-of-body experience that seem to coincide with these Van Allen belts, which is quite fascinating. When you think about
those are worthy, right?
Yeah, so let's start out with a top model to understand that in this model, we see a creator of all. He's called the source. She, this entity that's infinite is called the creator of all, the source, many other names by Thoth, until he gets right toward the end of the tablets where he finally uses the word God. He never would use that word, probably because of all the negative connotations that happened with all the other.
Yes.
Exactly. So, but it's presented to us that this is the divine system architect that created the entire top level hologram, of which the Earth is only experiencing a program within a program. So we're experiencing a reality that's been designed for us specifically by some very advanced intelligence that is a subset of what the creator of all created in the grand system hologram. Okay, so let's start from the Earth standpoint and work back to the higher dimensions, because that's where we are. Okay, a lot of people connect with it better that way.
Yes.
So in the Emerald Tablets, Thoth talks about going in and having, from the time he was in Atlantis, having access to a place called the Halls of Amenti, even before he left to go to Egypt. So apparently they had some underground facilities that they used to get to the Halls of Amenti. Okay.
Which they're just discovering or admitting to discovering right now.
That's right. So that is, we know now that's underneath the Sphinx in
Pyramid of Khufu, or the Sphinx or the Pyramid of Khufu.
Well, I don't give Khufu or Cheops any credit to those pyramids. So
the names,
it's on the Giza Plateau. Okay, we believe under the entire Nile Valley is the Halls of Amenti. It's not just a little chamber where you go in and do some meditation or something. It's a huge complex. So much so that the pyramid that's shown here and the Sphinx that were on the surface were only surface markers for a much larger underground civilization.
Yes, that's right.
Okay, so from that standpoint, he describes that in those chambers when he first came here, even before Atlantis was built, 32 avatars, he said, came with him, saw that there was a battle of light and dark going on this planet, and that all of the primitive entities that were here were completely enslaved in a program that we'll call the Earth's slave hologram, okay? Distinct from the creator of all's hologram, okay? So with that said, he said these avatars, 32 of them, went into the Halls of Amenti where this flower of life symbol was emanating a certain frequency that was the animating force for all life on this planet, okay? This is kind of where the Merkaba field comes from. Now, Thoth said every 100 years out of 1,000, he had to go into this chamber to renew his body, his avatar body, okay? But while he was in there in stasis, he could roam all over the Earth, visit all kinds of people, which it's hard to understand how he could do that in this holographic construct. But that's probably one of the reasons why they called him thrice great Hermes. He had mastered the mind, the body, and the spirit in these dimensions, and he was completely unconstrained. And
now let's just briefly mention some of those names that he took on as avatars. We have Buddha, is one of the most famous. Jesus, if he was real, was Thoth. We go down the list of a lot of these influential changers of our timeline, right? These humans that seem to be far ahead of everyone else, to where they were truly masters of enlightenment, and then they spread that truth and wisdom to others. And so when you mention that he's in the Halls of Amenti and he's coming out to travel around on these avatars, do you think that maybe that's still happening now?
Oh, absolutely. It's been happening all through time, ever since. This is his modus operandi. So let me finish on the Halls of Amenti. So he said there were 32 of them that he brought with him, okay, when he came back here, okay? Now, you have to remember, his name was Gaga in the Enuma Elish, affiliated with the planet Mercury. Okay. Then he was known as Gazeta as he escorted the Adapa to meet Anu in the Adapa tale in my third or fourth chapter of my Seven Planet Mercury Rising. He was known as Ningshita, which is a name that I kind of connected with and have used a lot. He was known as Thoth, the Atlantean. Okay. He was known as Thoth, the god of Egypt. Okay. He was also known as Tahuti in Egypt, and he had some other names too.
Quetzalcoatl, Kukulkan.
Well, now we're over in the Yucatan region. Yep. So now he was known as Kukulkan and Quetzalcoatl there. He was known as Melchizedek. Who was the king of Salem, right, in the Alchemist book.
That's right. Yep.
So if you look up Edgar Cayce's table of the incarnations of Jesus, Thoth, you'll see that even Edgar Cayce had an entire table of incarnations for this being in it. It's massive, okay?
Including Enoch of the Gnostics,
That's
which
right.
is basically the birth of religion here.
That's right. So now when you're reading the book of Enoch, which isn't lost anymore, you realize that Enoch, when he went to Tenochtitlan, according to the Lost Realm, this was the place where Methuselah, the father of Lamech, went to find Enoch to figure out what is this crazy Noah birth, because the kid is talking at birth. He's got white skin, blue eyes, and he's levitating. Okay, he's freaking us out. That's in the book of Enoch. Okay, so when he got there, that turns out to be none other than Mexico City, right? So now you see those those constructs at Teotihuacan and Tenochtitlan that are very close to each other near Mexico City. This is where Methuselah went to find Enoch, who was living with the gods. Okay, well now you know why the ancient structures in Mexico were so important to me, because I realized that was Thoth himself.
That's right. And all over the world, most of these very sacred structures are being destroyed and suppressed and trying to be banished so that we don't know who the great wisdom of humanity and mankind has been, which has been Thoth and Enki all along. Right.
So speaking of that, let's finish on this model. So here we have the Earth. On the surface of the Earth, because of the circumference and using the speed of light, we end up with what's called a Schumann resonance, and we're going to get to that in just a second. So there's a standing wave frequency on the surface of the Earth that falls right into your brainwave state, okay? And that turns out to be in the alpha state, not the one most of us are experiencing right now, which is beta, okay?
That's very important, too.
It is very important. I think we were jacked up with a false Merkaba field to put our brainwave state in a ADD kind of place where we weren't able to learn deeply without constantly trying to be in meditation and stuff. Okay, so they didn't make it easy. They wanted you scatterbrained to be a good slave.
And that's speaking to what you speak of when you mention how Ki, or the Earth, is considered a prison planet. It's not a prison planet from the Creator of all. It's a prison planet because of these frequencies that are making it so we're unable.
Well, I think the model gets even broader than that. Let's finish up the beings who are in the halls of Amente, and then we'll bring that to play. Okay.
Okay. We'll talk about that later. Definitely.
There were 7 beings in the halls of Amente that were called the Cycle Masters. Okay. These are the ones that were coordinating consciousness at its various planes of existence, or dimensions, if you will, as they were allowed to interact with each other, and as they evolved to a future point in time that Thoth describes, where all the planes that all of the dimensions that we can experience, and he names 9 of them, will be merging together in a single plane at some future point in time. That's what these cycle masters, I call them the wobble masters, okay? Because they're monitoring galactic wobbles and coordinating that with dimensional consciousness for some future event, and we believe that to be the great year.
And if there are 9 parallel dimensions, and you just mentioned that those 9 parallel dimensions are eventually going to merge into one, then if we're looking at this from a higher standpoint of the Creator of all, and what the title of the show is, the Master Plan.
That's right. So keep that in mind, that these cycle masters that are listed, and there were only 7 listed, but they're of a subset of a total of 9. Okay, which was very, very interesting as it ties to our dimension. So our Earth is in what's called the 3rd dimensional space. Okay, we have, according to Thoth, 9 parallel dimensions that go with this dimension. So if you're able to tune your brain a certain way, you can experience these different dimensions, and we'll talk about that. Okay, so this is really a brainwave tuning that allows you to experience these dimensions. So dimension is frequency, which is a perception in your mind.
That's right.
That can be measured through an EEG.
And that's what is very lost on people, is the idea of what dimensions is.
Yeah. Okay.
And a lot of it can be brought on simply by increased states of awareness. And all of a sudden you realize that you shift dimensions when you do something like that.
That's right. That's right. So that's why when you talk about a skewed perception filter of a human, one person may see a completely different thing. And then you look at the movie Lucy, where she's seeing the light spectrum, the energetic constructs of all matter through her filter, okay? So there's that whole broad spectrum. And speaking of spectrum, we only see a very small spectrum of light along the electromagnetic spectrum, which is our visual spectrum, which is 400 to 700 nanometers. So it's very, very small. And it turns out that coincides with these colors that are shown here on this,
Please talk about that, because I feel like that's something that is very underappreciated.
Yeah. So let's back up. So we're on the 7th planet, living in the 3rd dimension. We have what, according to most traditions, 7 chakras that are at 7 different wavelengths of light that correspond to the light frequency in a rainbow.
Just think about that for a second. Hold on.
That's crazy.
Just think about that for a second.
Who did that?
Exactly. So if we're talking about the master of all plan and how we are the children of the creator of all, and we're this advanced being that's been genetically manipulated to really reach this point of perfection, then we are simply light beings, because our chakra system and the way that we function at our highest level is simply mapped out based on the various visible light spectrum, color light spectrum, and those corresponding frequencies that go with them.
Yeah, okay, so let's get back to the halls of Mente and figure out who these top level players are that look like they're the liaisons to the creator of all. Okay, remember this top level, the holographic universe belongs to the creator of all.
Yes.
And the idea that the Earth is a slave planet comes up in the alien interview, Roswell alien interview, from the ISB discussion about how different souls get incarnated into avatar bodies on this planet, because it is a prison planet simulator for having a material experience for growth. Okay, so the lower level dimensional beings get brought here for that experience. Okay, so we must have been one of those at some point, and that's why we're here going through this school right now.
That's what this experience is, and people don't realize that everything they do and everything that's going on in their life is part of their experience and their story. And if they don't take awareness, if they don't bring awareness of that in, then they're just going to sail through frivolously and not build on any of those experiences.
Right. Okay. So let's build out from the halls of Mente. There's a flower of life crystal that's emanating a certain frequency of light that not only rejuvenates these avatar bodies that Thoth describes, and so now we've got 32 avatars in there that never took a body. They roam around, they work for the light, which is the creator of all, doing their missions on the Earth. Simultaneously, you've got 7 cycle masters that are there with them, and each one of those cycle masters, a subset of the 9 total. Okay, it's 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9. 3 is our dimension. So the 3rd dimensional one maps to our root chakra. Isn't that amazing? It's in control of the wavelength and frequency of that nerve ganglia of discrete consciousness, and you have to do your lessons, do your own work before you can overcome that entity that allows you to go to the next chakra.
That's right. And to get through your root chakra, you have to do certain things in experience in your life to be able to earn that.
That's right. And this is completely coincident with what's described in the Hindu gods and their understanding of the spiritual and physical things you have to do to evolve and get all of your chakras working. It isn't something you go, okay, I'm going to listen to this music and all my chakras are going to work. That doesn't work. There's real spiritual lessons and things you have to do to get past each one of those gates. Okay?
And remember that every day, because it's important.
Exactly. That is your life work. That should be your life work.
And when you hear that, when you see this, look at all those materialistic things that are distracting you and all those things that are coming through to anger us and to put us in a state of fear, and remember what the purpose of this life is, because we're giving you the constructs of how you can excel to any stage of your process you want, as long as you can develop the awareness of it first and foremost.
Right. So we're going to go a little bit deep here, in that in the Emerald Tablets, Thoth said the key to breaking your illusion of Ka that you were born into, this illusion of Maya, it's called various things in various cultures, that the material world that you're seeing out there is the real thing. Well, it's not, okay? And so he tells everybody is born into Ka. So if you look at this diagram here, he's talking about the ways out of the holographic enslavement you were born into. Okay,
it's simply the path of enlightenment, right?
Right, and how this relates to the other dimensions. So let's just do something real quick so we can get the dimensions all squared away before we talk about how to get out. Okay, so he mentions 14 lower dimensions here. Okay, these lower dimensions are not accessible to us. Only the 9 parallel ones are. Without leaving this boundary space. You see this? These 3 layers of the Van Allen belts that surround the Earth kind of end up being the out-of-body experience boundaries for Robert Monroe and also for Thoth. So let's talk about out-of-body.
That's why they say we're trapped here.
Well, let's do one other thing that's really important here. There's Cycle Master 3 through 9 that's in the Halls of Amenti that's controlling us. What happened to number 1 and 2? Why are they not mentioned? Well, my postulate is that number 1 and 2 deal with these lower dimensions.
Yes.
Okay. So that's why they're not even discussed as part of the Untanas, Puertas, Chietl, and Goiana, Sembetal, and Ardal. You know, the masters that are shown in Emerald Tablet number 6, these are the ones that are the cycle masters that control by watching the wobble, whether it's the Satya Yuga or the Kali Yuga or the Great Year that we're discussing for us, okay, that came from the Mayans. So keeping those in mind, okay, these guys are trying to coordinate us in our personal evolution of our consciousness and also for future coordinations with other cycle masters on other galaxies that are bringing all of this conscious awareness to one plane of existence. So the reality is,
let that marinate within you for a minute.
All beings on every galaxy and planet, according to Thoth, when he went out and visited them out of body, they were all on the same path at various levels of evolution. Some of them had gotten so far that they no longer needed to toil and they could create everything with their mind.
And that shows you what is possible for what we think of as a pure physical experience is merely a representation of, in most cases, just a third dimension or the lowest dimensions we have.
That's right.
When you start moving up above,
the
dimensions like 4, 5, 6, you're talking about beings that do not have a physical form.
Or they can or cannot. So
they can choose that. That's right.
Yeah. So let's see if we can find a way out of this hologram. Okay, based on what Thoth told us. He told us that if you start distinguishing between energy and matter in your body, you will find a way out. And that leads to the idea of an energy body in a human that is distinguished and is infinite, irrespective of this meat host. Okay.
Exactly.
So when you find that, then you know, guess what? There's no longer any fear of death. You know that what you're working for are character attributes that are going to multiple higher dimensions. So let's walk our way out of that. So suppose you're able to achieve that and do this process that Thoth gives you to have an out-of-body experience. And he gives it to you right in the documents, okay?
Mind over matter.
So suppose you're able to do that. He tells you to approach a place at the outer boundary of the Earth, which he calls the duat. And a duat means 2, okay? It's two portals. The Earth side portal is where the 3rd and the 4th dimension meet, here on this yellow line here. See that? Okay. Yeah. And then on the other side of that is the 5th dimension that connects to the 6th dimension. And there's 15 different pathways, according to Thoth, to get there. So let's stick right here for a second. Guarding that portal, according to the tablets, is none other than Osiris himself.
There's a very important name that you'll see all across Egyptian culture.
Oh, yeah.
Important things. Now, who is Osiris, Gerald?
Okay, well, if you start studying the Egyptian lore, the Book of the Dead, and things like that, you'll realize that Osiris was the chief deity that was even above Isis and Thoth, okay?
Yes.
And he shows up in the magic cards holding the same symbols that Nengshita ends up holding. So all of a sudden you realize you're talking about Thoth and Osiris being father and son.
There it is, Enki all along.
So so how can Enki be? Is he able to occupy multiple avatar bodies at once?
Absolutely.
So if his son can do it, I guarantee he can do it. So the idea that he has a avatar that's called Osiris that's guarding this portal for any entity, male or female, that's trying to leave this construct, and they have to be initiated to do so by none other than his son, Thoth, okay, who gave you the knowledge of how to do it. Well, suppose you do that and you get to this portal, then he gives you a whole bunch of things you've got to discuss with this gate guard before he sends you back to the Earth, okay? He says if you show up here and you're full of darkness and you somehow got here, it would have been better for you to have never attempted this, because you may be banned from this portal forever.
And can I mention that when they reference that in a lot of what we see now in movies, the way they kind of show that is if someone goes up to heaven, they show it, they weigh their soul on a scale with a feather, and if your soul weighs more than the feather, then you're denied going through, because you have to basically free your soul of all of the dark things you've done, and that's we're talking.
That's exactly here. So if you light up all your chakras and purge the dark blocks out of you, this is like the casting out of the 7 demons that Jesus talked about with Mary Magdalene. This is lighting up your human energy body so you have no more darkness. Because why? Because the Ba energy that allows this to happen, you can see it right here, that's different than the call. This is an energy from the creator of all. This is your infinite light sun soul source that takes you back through this gate and back to places where other beings cannot go.
And if you didn't follow it a certain way, you wouldn't be allowed through because you didn't earn that. You
right.
Can't be allowed to go to a higher dimension as being, quote unquote, kind of a darker soul or a bad soul, because what kind of ramifications would that have for a teaching place? Right.
So as far as that goes, this Ba energy, which could be woken up inside a human using the Merkaba meditation, which I highly recommend if people haven't done that. And I've talked about it many, many times. And we'll leave a link for it with a video so that you can use that as well. Okay, so if you wake up your Ba energy in your body, this energy comes from the creator of all. Okay, and when you get to this place and go through this ritual, what he's saying is that you too can pass through this portal, through the Duat, through this 12 houses of illusion, where he names some of these old Egyptian gods that are still there. Okay, and at that point you can land in the 6th dimension, which is what he calls where they have an ancient home, and it could be some Pleiadian or Syrian home. I don't know exactly where this is, but he calls it a Rulu. Okay. And here, Enki is there, and he's the light force top dog. And underneath him, he has Horus, Isis, Sekhet, Hepshet, and several other the beings that you read about in the Egyptian Book of the Dead.
Yes. And
also, the Dark Lord of Arulu is there, which I believe is Enlil. That's the role he's playing, at least at this point. And there are other beings that are discussed here that go along with him, including the being that we see in Greece called Hades, who was none other than Nergal, okay, which he was also called Metatron, and he was married to Ereshigal, and they controlled the underworld where souls went before they got reincarnated. So let's talk about that.
Isn't that fascinating, though, to think about how you look at that chart down there? Someone has to fit the duality role of the dark side. It couldn't be 2 people on the light side, right?
Well,
which shows you that there has to be always a counter to that.
Well, at least as far back in the records as I can see, these 2 have been playing light and dark, and it's by design. Okay,
exactly.
It's part of creating the duality in the simulator for the creator of all. So they're both agents of the creator of all, which is really, because the creator of all,
at the end they're working together, right?
It allows both. Yeah, when you see the God and the Satan shaking hands over a bet over $1, like you see in some of the movies, this is what it's referring to. They cooperate as a high-level chess team. Okay. So with that said, suppose you never woke up your Ba and you're still in your car and you somehow have an out-of-body experience, or you die and you give up your material host and you end up in this portal, no Ba, then you get reincarnated. Boom, back into the holographic simulator you go. Okay, that's how it works.
Yeah, and so the Ba is the spark, the creator of all spark that's inside of us. And if anybody wants to think that we're just simply a slowly evolved monkey, look at the idea that this Ba energy within us is specifically made for this learning process of growth.
That's exactly right.
Purpose behind it. So that's why when you say to yourself, what am I going to do today? What am I going to do with my time? Remember, what you do with your time can change everything in your entire story and your outcome.
Well, that's a perfect lead-in to let's jump out of Rulu, which is the 6th dimension. He talks about the 7th and the 8th dimension. They're a little bit hard to see, these 2 lines right here. Yes. Are dimensions of complete chaos. Remember in the movie with was it Jupiter Ascending?
Yes.
Where supposedly this being Marduk Aben Ra was in this celestial chariot, smiting this celestial dragon with his weapons. Okay, this represents the dimensions of chaos here. And apparently there are beings from this sixth dimension whose only job is to keep chaos at bay so the whole construct is not destroyed. Okay, so
and those, they happen to be in between these protectors of light.
Exactly. Yeah. So these beings are at a very much higher level than even Enki and Enlil are.
Perfect balance, right?
Well, now you look at these cycle masters that were in the halls of Amente. You know, they never had a body either. So these ones are coming from these kind of dimensions where they're working all the way up to the 9th dimension right here, which is the circle of light that he describes, the source of all the holographic universe that's created by this being, okay? And Thoth gives us all kinds of attributes about the constructs that this entity laid out for us in the Emerald Tablets. I think those are just fascinating. And they show up in threes and threes and threes.
If there's ever a teaching, anything that somebody who's on this path, who has reached a point where they want to see the ultimate teaching of our path here and of our placement, taking our Ba energy and ascending out. The Emerald Tablets, which were found in Mexico, below Thoth's famous Teotihuacan pyramid. Those to me are the greatest constructs for understanding who we really are that you can possibly read.
There's lots of wonderful writings from Thoth. As a matter of fact, he was credited with over 36,000 books. Okay, so we've only seen a few of these things, but every one of them that he writes is fabulous. They come from different cultures and different viewpoints. Now that you realize he's an immortal being that can take on an avatar body anytime he wants. So let's go back and finish this thing about some of the constructs of the holographic universe that are really deep laws of nature that we need to understand. Two that come to mind are the law of time you just mentioned a minute ago, which is shown here in this box. And then the law of creation of matter, okay? How is matter created? And this is where I think it gets some of the deepest questions you can ask about the constructs of the holographic universe. So the first one I want to do is the law of time. And in this one, the creator of all, as Thoth is approaching the cycle masters, the ones in the halls of Amente over here, asking them about this particular teaching from the creator of all, the law of time. And basically, he's told that it's a vibration that was issued from the creator of all that was eternal through the space void. So you had the space void first, where you just had darkness. Then this vibration was sent out from the creator of all in order to create the concept of time, which truly is a construct that can delineate events that are composed of matter and actions and scenes, actors on a stage, distinguish them so that you have even the concept of one dimension separate from another.
It's almost like creating a storyboard.
Well, it turns out that time is one of the most mysterious things in understanding what it is. And it turns out that because of if you think about a cymatic vibration and how cymatics work, that if it's at a certain frequency, we can look at metal particles on a drumhead, and all of a sudden it creates these geometries, right, with cymatics. So the spoken word of the creator of all that created this vibration through space was and it still exists today, is a construct that Thoth not only explains in infinite detail as a way of sequencing events so that we can experience things not all at once, but as a sequence, right?
Yeah.
So having the idea and the concept of time, space and time are so interrelated that you can separate something by microseconds in an event, which is a delineation, or you can do it in space based on how fast you were traveling.
Space-time.
Space and time, they're very related that way. So then he asked, in discussing when you leave your body, how can it be that we can overcome time and travel to parallel dimensions, okay? And he actually gives you the method for doing that, which is absolutely fantastic.
And that proves to you that we're not just avatars that are simply third-dimensional beings, but that our true essence of what we really are, our energy, is a multidimensional consciousness.
Exactly. So we have access to that, and he tells you how to have access to that. And that's why I showed these 9 parallel dimensions over here, okay? You have access to those inside this hologram without having to go out through the duod, okay? That's what's really amazing about that. So you can actually go visit 9 images of yourself. You may not know it's yourself. You may walk into a body and think you're just an actor in a play, but you might be one of those actors in this, seeing a different parallel evolving reality is this one's going through these lessons and I'm going through these, and how do they all merge into one experience, right?
Okay, so if you have 9 parallel dimensions that have different sequences of events of the same construct that are happening simultaneously, like maybe this Earth is a little bit different than the other one, then is the whole purpose behind that to protect the outcome of a story all along so that it can not all just collapse on itself?
Well, I think it gives you 9 parallel opportunities to find your way back to the Ba energy and the source, creator of all. So that, it may be if you learn to travel out of your body and visit other dimensions, you might be used as an agent to go help one of your other counterparts to speed up to get where you are, so that mutually you together can evolve as an entity to get out of this graduation situation.
That's mind-blowing to think about.
It is mind-blowing. It is mind-blowing. So anyway, one other thing I want to cover on this is the law of creation of matter. This is probably the other most important and interesting piece to me.
And that leads in well to our next thing.
Yeah, we're gonna go cover these dimensions a little bit more in the next picture. But the law of creation of matter, if you just could understand, okay, this being, the creator of all, the source of light, uses light as its most unmanifested way of creating matter. And we're just now discovering that that's even true at the DNA level, that light animates your DNA. You're like, wow, how does that work? Well, if you could figure out how this creator created the laws, a quantum encryption key, if you will, that can take light, mix it with primitive elements from an atomic table of the elements, no matter what planet it's from, and through some rules, that interaction forms the bonds of all material that you see.
Wow.
And that includes you and I.
And there it is. And now let me ask you, I think one of my personal opinions on this is that the fact that we haven't seen this construct really shown to us is because not many who have been down this road truly came from it from an engineer standpoint. And if you don't have an engineering mind to look at this, it may be difficult to really understand where everything fits in.
Well, that's why I kind of really connected with the Emerald Tablets. And I realized that what he told us in this diagram is absolutely fantastic. Do you realize that what he essentially tells us is that there are 9 parallel dimensions in one dimension of time? Where have we heard that before? String theory.
That's right.
And parallel dimensions. Listen, this was supposedly translated in 1924 or so. We didn't have any concept of string theory and multi-dimensions or how the mathematics could actually support such a thing. But now we do. So
we're just trying to catch up to
we're just now catching up with this knowledge, and actually at a place where we can even understand what he was explaining to us in these diagrams. So
and a lot of scientists are still not willing to admit to string theory, by the way.
I understand. So, and I put that in my Emerald, or my 7th Planet Mercury Rising book. I actually did a write-up on the holographic universe. I think it was chapter 7, and how many scientists are now understanding and believe that the parallel dimensions are real, one dimension of time is real, and the fact that we have a mathematical model for it, and that it agrees with what Thoth told us in these documents.
That's right.
This
is reality.
That ought to make your head just spin around, okay? So let's look at this next picture and just go a little bit more into these 9 parallel dimensions, because it kind of ties into the Mayan underworld frequency concept, which we now realize was taught to them by none other than Quetzalcoatl Thoth. Okay, so he's teaching them the same model in their culture. Okay, so imagine that each of these concentric circles shown here on this right side were different radiuses from the center of the Earth going outward along. So imagine this is the center of the Earth, and this is the radius of the Earth coming out this way. So at each one of these, so if you were coming from the center here and going out here, this might be R1, but if you go a little bit deeper inside, R2, blah, 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 like that. So each one of these goes deeper into the Earth, and if you don't go too far, based on the math, where you take the circumference of the Earth and divide it into the speed of light, you'll get a frequency, which is really terrific. Imagine that. Remember we told you on the surface of the Earth, if you do that, take the circumference of the Earth and divide it into the speed of light, you'll get the Schumann resonance. Okay, that's 7.8 hertz, which is about right here. Okay, somewhere in right here. Okay, and it changes slightly depending on what the solar radiation is doing. So imagine that you were in an elevator at the surface of the Earth, and you're at F1, and you start going down, 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 and you get all the way down to F9, and you say, okay, stop the elevator. I'm going to get out right here. I want to experience this frequency in my brain, which maybe it's 12.112 hertz. I just made these up, okay? based on these distances that I came up with. And what I was trying to do was get these frequencies to land in your brain waves based on what the Mayans told us about 9 underworld frequencies. And I think this becomes literal when you realize underworld frequencies, they change as a function of the radius of where you are on the Earth, or you're going in the depth of the Earth. To some depth, we don't know how far it is. Maybe it goes all the way to the hollow Earth point where you get the highest dimensional frequency, which is here. I don't know.
So if that also corresponds to not only the underworld frequencies, but where we're passing through in the galactic center and all these places, then it's almost like it's being planned all along. You know, if you think of where, well, the Earth is supposed to be this frequency for during this period, and then it passes through and enters in a new period, then they can almost map out what they know is going to happen, right? With consciousness and how consciousness is going to change and evolve. Right.
I agree.
Well, we kind of talked about the idea of who some of these players are. We mentioned Enlil, we mentioned Enki, and who they are and what their roles are. So will the dark and light always battle each other, or is it part of just we kind of talked about this already, but so there really isn't a dark side that we're constantly fighting to not win. They're really working together, right?
Well, they set up the constructs for us to experience it as dualism, and I brought this diagram up to kind of explain that to you and what we're seeing with dark, our perception of dark and light. That doesn't mean it's real, but that's what's been given to us so that we pick a team and go, okay, I'm going to choose the light team. We like to pick a team, right? And then we become a fan of that team. Isn't that how we work?
Yeah, and so if we look at, I just want to mention, the creator of all is this universe, and all of them is an expression of himself, right? Itself, an expression on every form. Duality, you would see every emotion from the most amazing love you could imagine to just utter hatred and what we would consider to be, in our perception on polarity, to be a very dark and kind of violent place. But in terms of that, if it's all just an expression, then there needs to be beings that have every expression, right?
That's right.
So here we see charts where certain beings resonate with the light side of that resonating. I feel connected to the source and where I am. And then there are those who are fulfilling a very other important side. And you can't have one without the other, right, Gerald?
Right, yeah. So let's just kind of play this illusion game that they're presenting to us in duality and give you kind of a real quick rundown of the constructs that we've run in. And this is my perception, okay? It doesn't mean it's everybody's. But from what I've seen of the players involved.
With evidence too, though.
Well, how does it work? So I see these big three right here on the left side, representing the light. On the left, we have the light team.
Yeah.
And, you know, at the beginning of it all, the first avatar was created by this one, who was E.A. Enki in the Atrahasis. So he was the first one to take this Ba energy that we now realize came from the creator of all. His brother probably didn't know that, right? And infused this energy into this Adapa being and started the whole process of our experience on this planet, okay?
And Enlil supposedly didn't know about that and was furious when he found out that was included as part of these perimeter worker genetic altercations. But, I mean, did he know? Or, I mean, if they're working together, it's weird to me.
Well, if you look at the dialogue that went on between them in the Atrahasis and the accusations that Enlil was making toward Enki,
he was
trying to subvert his authority, I don't think he knew. Okay, so let me walk through this just real fast. So we had Enki and his half-sister Ninmah, who was Isis in Egypt here. And we also had Ningshita Thoth here.
And you can see the Caduceus that he then, which originally was Enki's symbol, that he then gave to his son Thoth. So remember, whenever you see any kind of an ambulance or a medical industry symbol go by, it's right in plain sight all along, showing us the Caduceus, which is you know the intertwined DNA.
Right. So that was the symbol of the healer, the alchemist, the Lord. It was actually a very interesting symbol that had a lot of meaning, and we've gone over it a lot of times. But without getting lost in those, so what did they give us? We had these basic documents: the Enuma Elish, the Atrahasis, and different documents that came out of Atlantis: the Kabbalion, the Emerald Tablets, and the Law of One, and all these teachings. Like I said, there were 35,000 books.
Wisdom that was given to us.
Right, so most of it has been destroyed through the ages, but we've gotten some of it, and it's still around. So remember in the Garden of the Eden in Eridu, they were told not to eat in the Adam and Eve story, not to eat of the tree of the knowledge of good and evil. Well, the tree of the knowledge of good and evil represents the ability to distinguish the truth from a lie, right? So if you can do that, you can operate on their level, essentially. So that's why I separated this chart this way, is you've got truth that's coming out of this side, and then you've got forces that are trying to obscure the truth to confuse you in your skewed perception filter, knowing how we're built with our ability, very limited ability to use our mental constructs to our capacity because of the slaves that we've been made.
Now, if people see this chart, this is fantastic. I actually haven't seen this yet. If you look at this and you wonder where to go and what to follow, I don't know what's true. You know, I've been a devout Baptist all my life, and I've been reading about that. How do I know what is real evidence? How do I know that's not just a lie? That's propaganda.
Well, yeah. Well, how do you know that? First of all, if you know who the players are and what roles they were playing at the very top level of game, whether they're acting as double agents or whatever, the fruits of their spirit are clear, and anybody who can distinguish between creation and destruction and truth and a lie would go, oh, those ones are bringing that. Do I really like that? I don't know.
It will resonate within you and your higher self if you try to feel what's the truth is.
Yeah. For instance, let's just go to the patriarch over here on the right. So we got this Dark Lord of Arulu who took Reshagdal captive, who turned out to be Thoth's mother in the Emerald Tablets, and he goes and rescues her. Okay. Well, that turns out to be Enlil at the head of it, who is the head of the Dark Brothers. Okay.
Known as Zeus also, by the way, too.
Oh, yeah, exactly. So Zeus and Poseidon right across from each other here, right? Okay. And then we have all the things that happened in the Mesopotamian region once that got handed over to Enlil, who was the chief deity of the city of Ur and Nippur, okay, where Abram was born, and his father Terah was serving that very being. Okay, so we had documents out of there, and it turns out that Abram became the progenitor for the three world's great religions: Islam, Christianity, and Judaism. Okay, well, now all of a sudden, when you find out Abram was really a general that was working for this one, and he was told to go take this promised land on behalf of these people, and it was actually a genocidal routing of all the beings that were there before, you go, wow, that sounds awful. That's going on today. Is that?
And I want to mention, yeah, and exactly. And I want to mention that those three teachings, Islam, Christianity, and Judaism, they originally stemming from Enoch, which is Ningshita Thoth on the left side. So
that's right.
You see a teaching from the light, right, which was about our spiritual connection with the universe and the creator of all. And you see that it was rewritten, the editorial oversight.
Right here, exactly.
That's right.
That's true for all the documents. Okay, any one of these beings that had access to these documents, whether it's the Quran or the Bible, they were on. And this is an oversimplification, okay? We generally would split people up into the Enkiite clan and the Enlilite clan. Well, that's not completely fair, because Ninmah was the half-sister to this one and this one, okay?
But she chose, obviously, her own.
But she had children by both of them.
Yeah.
So that's the truth of the matter, is they tried to intermarry across these clans and mitigate this thing, but it's the light and dark construct still goes on today.
And it seems to not have anything to do with who's born to who, right? Look at Thoth Ningshita, born from Enki, becomes the great wisdom of humanity, whereas Marduk becomes one of the cruelest pretenders of light.
Well, also Nergal was shunned by his father Enki for teaming up with Ninurta, who was the son of Enlil over here, when they went to war. So yeah, I mean, none of it's not pure, okay? And as a matter of fact, Thoth's mother, Reshagdal, was in the offspring of Enlil. And so Enki had a child with Enlil's relative to have his son Ningshita.
As you can see, the spectrum of where we end up is based on where we decide to follow in our path.
That's right. Okay, so I wanted to bring that in for you as we were talking about light and dark, and we started talking about this table here, and I think we can bring it up real quick because we threw a bunch of names around just to get it clear. So let's go just do Enki and Enlil real quick. And I didn't put all his names in here. Actually, Enlil is ranked number 50 here, you can see. He was known as Asher up in Syria. He was also in here. By the time we made it in Egypt, he was already Yahweh at that point. Okay, El Shaddai, Jehovah. He had many names.
It's a very important table. I would encourage everyone.
Yeah, I didn't put that in here because he didn't have a name that was being used in Egypt.
But that's Yahweh, definitely.
Well, but then again, I found out later that it looked like Seth, the one that trapped his brother in a coffin and killed him was none other than Enlil. Okay, I thought it was an offspring of Marduk, but so there's a lot of confusion about exactly what role Enlil was playing while Enki was down in the Egyptian territory, because all of Africa was given to Enki. So Enlil had Mesopotamia, Enki had Africa, Nana right here had the Indus Valley, and Ninhartsog or Ninmah, she had the space, Earth, the Bond Earth Heaven facilities that were up in the Sinai. That was her assignment, even though she had a medical facility in the city of Shurupak. Okay, so let's just do a couple of their names. On Nibiru, he was called Enlil on Nibiru. I can't remember what his name was. I think he went by Jupiter at that point. I'll have to go look again. Okay, but Enki was called Ea, and Ningshita was Gaga on the Enuma Elish, but he was called Gazeta later. Ningshita, Thoth, Hermes, and like we said, he had many, many names. Mercury to the Romans. Okay.
And I know a lot of people have seen so many of these in the course of going through school and in various places they've come across, and it's always portrayed as these are just mythological gods that aren't real, and they're just constructs of someone's imagination. But when they spread across civilizations and shared with these names all across the world, and you realize that they're all connected and related, you see who these great gods are all along.
Well, you know, in college, when you start studying history, they usually start from ancient Greece, right?
Yeah.
So all of a sudden you got Zeus and Poseidon sitting right here, and Maya and Hera and all these, you know, ones that were on the Greek Olympian God Council, right? And all the minor ones. Well, all of a sudden you realize that Poseidon is Enki and that Zeus is Enlil, and you go back to that chart I was just showing you. These are the two highest ranking ancient astronauts that seem to be having their way with the avatars in our hologram. Okay,
that's right.
There are other beings involved too. There are other civilizations involved, but these ones had a particularly impactful mark on the primitive workers, us. Okay, so that's why I'm focusing on either Alpha Draconians and Syrians and Pleiadians and all those too. Yeah, and it all gets very complicated in terms of a galactic council and who all is really involved at this place. So I don't want to lose people on this, but just to get a few of the key players to realize that Poseidon and Zeus, who were the top gods on the Olympian Council, were also the top gods on the Anunnaki Council, except for Anu and Antu here that were back on the Nibiru. So we knew them as Geb and Nut in the Egyptian creation story, their cosmogony, okay? Well, it turns out that another name for Antu, who is Anu's wife, is Neith. And she actually was the being that was discussed by the chief priest of Sais in Egypt when Solon went to see him to find out about the history of the Greek culture and their ancestors, because this priest in Solon that told Solon from Sais, hey, this was the greatest civilization ever existed. And this particular goddess right here was the link between Egypt and the goddess you call Athena, where Athens was based on, was this being right here. Okay, so all of a sudden you see the connection between these Anunnaki members of their council and the Greek gods, and it becomes real. And you can
it should make people should realize that if we look at the hierarchy system of our kingship on earth and about how we've had all of these outcomes that have led us a certain direction with these deluges and all of these things, it's followed a specific story with gods literally fighting over civilizations that were created and destroyed.
Right. So this brings up some deep questions about, I don't know, the nature of life. Is there anything else on that question that you think you want to cover before?
No, we're going to go into the last part here before we conclude, and we were to end the show out here. I just wanted to talk about where we are now, and in terms of how important we are now. That's been talked about by the Mayans, and the fact that people are living in such fear right now with everything that's going on. And I just want to mention while you're looking at a couple of those, that if we look at our story and we look at the story of what's happened to us, and you see all those names that are on there and who's written what and who's rewritten what over history, and so if you can go back to the pure writings, things like the Atrahasis and the Enuma Elish and the lost teachings that were found in the Nagamani Library, when you look at all those, you start to see an unedited version of what our real story here was. And 12,000 years ago, when one of the passes of Nibiru came through, and one of these cataclysmic pole shifts that's spoken about all throughout the religions of the flood with Zayasudra, who is Noah, and how he was saved and they built an ark. That's been given us told to us, and many think it's just a myth and it's just a made-up thing. But if we really realize that it's all real and that humanity was at the very edge of its own annihilation from this horrible extinction level event that occurred on Earth, and you see the sadness and all the things that's been written from Enki, because remember, we are his project of creating the perfect being, out of this mammal that they found here, this primitive mammal. We are the outcome to that, of this great being of light, and that's like the creator of all. And so I look at it as, because of how horrible our past was in terms of us going through these tragic events, that's been shown so often. I think that's the very means for so much of our positivity going forward, is the idea that Enki would simply never let this happen again, especially where we are now. What do you think, Gerald?
Well, it brings up the question of what is the creator of all's end game for us, and where are we now, right? So let's start with that. Well, we have some clues based on some calendars. And Thoth gave us the calendar in Egypt, and he also gave us the calendar in Sumer, and he gave us the calendar in the Mayan culture, which is the one I'm going to talk about right now. And
we'll end on the Mayan calendar. That'd be a good place to wrap up.
Yeah, so I actually was a big fan of Ian Lungold's, and he was a student of Dr. Joseph Kellerman's, who wrote about the Mayan culture, decoding the calendar, coming up with an analog from the Mayan, looked like a wheel within a wheel of gears turning to produce the different sequence of events that they could map out by day.
Which Thoth created through their civilization.
Right. So this was a calendar that took into account the sun and the moon, which is what he wanted when he left Egypt as Thoth. He was Thoth there, and he was Thoth the Atlantean too. So when he left Egypt and brought the Olmec stone workers over to Mexico, they started their civilization, and eventually they ended up with the Aztec calendar that was clearly based on the countdown from the Mayan long count, which was August, I think, 11th, 3113 BCE. And if you counted down from that point, using the Mayan calendar and the Zulcan calendar, they had three of them. It showed essentially a unrolling of a eventual and iterative life forms that coincided with the 9 underworld frequencies of the Maya, to ultimately landing at what we can call the universal consciousness, which is the very top of this pyramid.
El Capitan shows that very well.
Yeah. So you had 9 rows and 13 columns. By the way, if you the temple here of Chichen Itza has 9 rows. Okay, and if you count the placards on the front, the ones that are indented, there were 52 of them, and that was Thoth's number, by the way.
And we'll be doing a show on that coming up for anyone who wants to know more about that.
Well, you can look at, and I'm not going to go into the math of the Zulcan calendar right now, but 52 was a very important number. 260 was a very important number. 13 and 20 were also very important numbers, okay? Along with the number 9 that segregated the different levels of life, from all the way down to protozoa, prokaryotes at the very bottom, single cell life, all the way up to complex life, and the time that it would take for this to happen, okay? So this was all coordinated in the Zulcan calendar, which is absolutely amazing.
That's incredible to think about, isn't it?
Well, Ian Lungold, wow, what an amazing guy. He took that calendar, and contrary to what everybody thought, that it ended on December 21st, 2012, it actually went to October of 2011. That's when the Mayan 5th sun came out. And if you take that 5 and multiply it by the 260, all of a sudden you'll see that it starts wrapping into what we consider the time frames in the zodiacal house, and also the time frames they use to calculate time in the Mayan calendar.
And that shows you right there that what was supposed to be about reaching a time of universal consciousness within Earth and in the place that we're passing through right now, they turned it into a fear-mongering 2012, you're going to be destroyed and the world's going to end.
Right.
So
right.
switch it around.
That's right. So the dark forces want to scare the bejesus out of you at the time that you're supposed to be reaching your light optimization point and ascending through this portal, if you will. And by the way, Enki has stated that all beings will be offered ascension.
Okay, so if we here we have the Earth, and it's passing through these galactic areas with these various vibrational frequencies and wobble changes. If we are at this point right now, what you're talking about is the point we're speaking about right now. And if a human being controlled through fear is being stagnated in the lowest form of consciousness they can be in, the state of fear is the lowest form of vibration they can be in. If that's true, then, like you just mentioned, then they won't be able to reach those steps that they need to take during this important time right now.
That's right. If you don't get your Ba energy activated, you're not going to a higher dimension. That's the bottom line.
That's why you have to purge fear, and that's the most important thing to do right now.
See this right here? No Ba, no key, stop, return to home base. You're not going to a higher dimension. That's how the construct is set up. And this has been true all through time, okay?
That's why they have mentioned so many times that once you rid yourself of fear, you truly will be free.
Right. So let's see. Are there any other pictures on here I want to bring up for you? I don't think so.
If you have anything else good to show before we end to conclude here.
Well, so what does this bring up? The Mayan calendar going down this countdown to and it clearly was a countdown from this 3,114 BCE to where we are now. Well, it looks like where we are now is going from the zodiacal house of Pisces into Aquarius. And there's absolutely no coincidence that they chose that zodiacal house as a reference point, Aquarius, because when our solar system passes through the galactic center in this meandering sinusoidal wave, following our rotating black hole that's 14 trillion miles in diameter as it's spinning in this nebula that you can see from the Hubble telescope. It kind of is a flat nebula, almost like a UFO disk. Okay, well, we're just debris out there spinning in that's rotating up and down as there's a wobble in our galactic rotation as well. Well, as we pass through that galactic center, we get that maximal energy. And I truly believe this countdown to the great year was a countdown because of what that energy does to the human meat modem. Okay.
And I wanted to bring up, so if everything is following that perfect galactic cycle wobble, and it's coinciding with the timetable of that species, right? So if we are in a warring primitive state where we're all fighting each other, but we happen to go through a zodiacal house that is supposed to be a high vibrational frequencies of a high consciousness, it just doesn't match, right?
Well,
it's not right.
Well, listen, we have free will. So anybody who wants to manifest death and destruction, they get to do that. And they can do it, and they're going to do it to each other at a heightened state because of the red chakra that's controlling that fight or flight kind of energy is going to be at its maximal point. So you're going to see maximal destruction during that period. The people.
What I also mean is, like, a lot of the things that have occurred on Earth have been during these kind of darker periods of Pisces and other zodiacal houses, almost like it was supposed to happen because it was that time period. But as we rise and go into Aquarius, the light, it's not like we're going to go into a dark time because that's not what these wobbles are supposed to be bringing in.
Well, if you read about the 9th cycle master, the top one, the chief of the cycle masters here in our dimension, his name is let's see. Ardal. His name is Ardal. Okay, he's the top dog. Okay, well, that energy is coordinating all the other lowered consciousnesses in our dimension to be wherever they're going to be when this event happens. Okay, so your consciousness and your scope of awareness are controlled by which chakra you're in. So if you're at a higher chakra and you're saying, I want ascension at this time because I see, it's all about me returning to the source as light. And this means nothing. I'm an eternal light being that can take on any form. Okay? So when you're at that level and you decide that's what you want, when you go through this galactic window of the great year and land where Pisces and it goes into Aquarius, this is where I think and let's go to this picture here. This is where your antenna is going to reach its maximum energy. Okay? So if you've got a subluxation supposedly in your spine here where this energy can't get to here, this is going to be the best you're going to get, and that's what reality you're going to manifest, whether you know it or not.
the importance of structural engineering, eating healthy. It's not about just the mind. It's about the entire temple we have.
Right.
It is our avatar of our consciousness. And you have to become a certain place, like he said, to be able to rise above in those chakras.
Right. So if you've got 7 chakras on the 7th planet, the expectation for me, if I had spawned this race and put this into a being and had given them all the latent circuits, and I brought those up a minute ago to activate those. Okay, I want to bring those up just real quick. The idea that we have genetic latent circuits that can be triggered either by symbols, sound, energy for us, or experiences for us to wake these chakras up and move through our phases of life. It turns out those latent circuits are coincident with very key phases in your life where you change consciousness from a blank slate as a baby. If you didn't have any consciousness, that's not to say there aren't avatars that come into form in this planet that are fully conscious at birth. Okay, I believe that's true. And the Indian culture with the reincarnation of the Dalai Lama, for instance, you know, that spiritual leadership being reincarnated into a body, they truly believe that. Okay, and they hunt around until they find who it is, and then they put them in place. So I think that's kind of true. But the idea of these latent circuits from Timothy Leary, the fact that the highest one is triggered energetically, can reprogram all these other circuits as a backup plan for the creator, whoever did this to us, so that we could participate with it, no matter how.
Always find our way back, right?
Exactly. So there's so many constructs in us that were given to us by these genetic masters that it's hard for me to ever go, okay, this one's bad and that one's bad, and you know, I'm gonna pick this one over that one. You know, that's like picking this team over that team. Okay, that's not the point. The point is to get back to the source yourself, using all the constructs that were given to you.
Very well said, Gerald. I think that's a great place to end the show tonight. We've really brought together a full understanding from an engineering standpoint of what's the framework of this holographic universe. Where do we fit in with these unique meat modem bodies that are antennas, you know, with our multidimensional consciousness? And really, is there a point to the time we're using now and what we're doing with our time? And as we really have laid out, if we utilize our time efficiently, and if we come from a place of compassion and we try to grow others and ourselves, you won't believe the energy you get and how your life changes from that point on. And I just want to really thank Gerald for his deep dive into this. And you can find Gerald has written some incredible books that really go much deeper into this. I mentioned them before, but he's got the Anunnaki of Nibiru and the 7th planet Mercury rising. And I wrote a book called The Illusion of Us, the Suppression of Human Consciousness. And please check these out.
I want to say something right there. I didn't know Matt until this year, and I am so happy that he came across my path and that we're, you know, exploring these different constructs together. It's okay to do it alone, but you're much stronger with your brothers. Okay. And I wanted to bring up this last picture for you here because this was the date. It was my birthday that I had set as a target in 2014 to have written my 7th planet Mercury rising. My birthday is in December 23rd, so it was right near Christmas. And I just basically finished the book. It still needed editing, but Krista took me on a hike to air my head out. We walked up to this really stellar cave and spent the day together, just being in the constructs of the hologram and realizing how we're being used. And it was just a magical experience. So,
isn't it humbling when you're out in the element of nature and the universe, and you can feel and understand where you belong and kind of your awareness of that?
Yeah, especially if you like meditating and playing a didgeridoo in a cave and the kind of stuff that we like to do. Okay, so changing our frequency. So this has been a great interview, Matt, and I look forward to working more with you and accomplishing many great things and blazing many new trails.
Well, thank you so much, Gerald. It's so humbling to be able to work with you every day. I'm very lucky to be able to even speak to you at this time. So I just want to thank everyone for watching this. We're going to continue doing these on a regular basis, and we actually have an Anunnaki series coming up where we're going to actually delve into the Maya and the Aztec and all of the Mesoamerica influences that have been Ningshita had brought over New Atlantis. So tune in for that, and thanks so much for joining us today.
It's been my pleasure, Matt.